as we're joined by Pete Nakos of On3 Sports, transfer portal reporter for the folks over at On3 on the Allo VIP line. Pete, appreciate you taking time out of the busy schedule. How's life treating you throughout the transfer portal season?
I'm pretty good, man. Drinking a lot of coffee and trying to get on the phone with a lot of people.
Well, I hear
but all good.
Let's just dive right in to Nebraska football specifically. And it's kind of an unprecedented time because Nebraska has one of the worst offenses in the Big Ten Conference this season, especially struggled at the quarterback position. But as you know, has been very active in the quarterback market. Obviously, Kyle McCord and then the bombshell that was dropped on Monday with Dylan Raiola. I guess just overall, what are you hearing regarding Kyle McCord and what should the approach for Husker fans be when hearing that they might not get just one, but also two?
I would think it'd be excitement, right, man? Not a shot at Nebraska here, but you mentioned it, right? The offense was abysmal in moments last year, and I mean, Matt Rule has been adamant about trying to get a quarterback. They've went after like 5 at my last count. Marcus Satterfield was aggressive, flying all over the country, and now they have a shot to get not only Kyle McCord, but Dylan Raiola. And I mean, if you're a Husker fan right now, that has to. I know it's been a long, 20 years, give or take. You would know better than me, but for Matt Rule to attack the quarterback market the way he has the last, week now, I mean, that really has to re-energize a lot of fans.
Hey, Pete, this is Austin. A question for you, too, on that. Who or what is the reason for Nebraska, having some of the success in the transfer portal and with Dylan Raiola? I mean, the brand, like you said, has lost some luster over those 20, 30 years. So is it something about Nebraska's football team? Is it, facilities, arms race? Is it Matt Rule? Who or what is the key to Nebraska's success so far in the transfer portal this cycle?
Yeah, so let's talk the quarterback market specifically in the transfer portal. I think that Nebraska offers almost everything that Kyle McCord is looking for. You can make the argument that Nebraska is a couple players away from really competing in the Big Ten stage. And I really think he's encouraged by what Matt Rule and Marcus Satterfield are selling him right now in these conversations. I don't know if there's one thing really setting Nebraska apart. I think, though, you guys know Matt Rule, right? Like, I think he's really personable. I think he leaves a strong impression on people. And I think Matt Rule is one of those characters in college football who's like made for the portal in terms of he's just like a good guy who can really connect with a lot of different people from just what I've seen from afar.
We're speaking to On3 Sports. Pete Nakos here with us on the Allo VIP line. Pete, sticking with specifically Ohio State players and through your conversations with guys that have entered the portal, I'm sure you've had hundreds throughout these last couple of weeks or so, but Ohio State specifically has lost a lot of players to the portal. Do you think there's something bigger going on at Ohio State? What is the situation that I believe 14 or 15 players from the Buckeyes have entered the portal, and Nebraska's in on 2 of them, obviously McCord, but then also Julian Fleming?
Yeah, so last time I checked, we're at 16 now.
Okay.
I think a couple things are going on in Columbus. I think the first thing that we all have to understand is that of the 16, I'd say at least anywhere between 8 to 11 of them, we're probably never going to see the field at Ohio State. It's a mix of walk-ons and then maybe 4-star recruits that's just never panned out. And then, you have Kyle McCord, who, just from conversations I've had, it's really clear that he wanted to be told that he's going to be the day one starter in 2024. And I just don't think Ryan Day was ready to jump at that, which that's a conversation they had. Make of it what you will. And then in the case of Julian Fleming, right, I don't think anyone can talk bad on that Ohio State wide receiver room. They're bringing in Jeremiah Smith. Carnell Tate and Brandon Ennis are fantastic, and they're really pushing Julian Fleming for reps this past year. Now he's a grad transfer. He wants to go somewhere where he is really going to be throwing the ball pretty frequently during a game. And sometimes, guys, you just have so much talent in a room that some people need to bounce. And we saw that with Jameson Williams when he went to Alabama.
Yeah, and Pete, I guess you mentioned something there about quarterbacks, and obviously quarterbacks just such a big topic right now here in Lincoln. But you speak about quarterbacks, and guys want to start where they're going, especially in a case like Kyle McCord. How about a guy like Dylan Raiola? Or I know Dante Moore is also out there who has multiple years of eligibility left. we're somewhat seeing a shift in mentality where these younger guys are now being more willing to go and maybe sit behind an older guy like Dante Moore. If he ends up going to Oregon, he's going to be behind Dylan Gabriel. Dylan Raiola at Nebraska, if he comes to Lincoln, he'll be behind Kyle McCord for a year. Why do you think there's that shift in, honestly, the last 2 years or so through the transfer portal where guys are maybe have 4 years left or 3 years remaining? They're okay with sitting for a season behind a veteran guy.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of young quarterbacks right now, guys, who do want to play right away. I think that, you look at Kyle McCord, right? He sat behind C.J. Stroud for 2 years. I would say that Kyle McCord is pretty close to a polished product, and everyone always has room to improve. Don't get me wrong, but Kyle threw for over 3,000 yards. He went 11-1. I think learning behind an elite quarterback makes a difference. By no means do I think Nebraska getting involved in Kyle McCord is the reason why Dylan Raiola might flip his commitment, but I would think now that he's really just trying to get more and more information about what's going on in Nebraska. I'm sure that sitting behind McCord for a year is a good thing, and Georgia is trending to get Carson Beck back, and I think there's all kinds of factors on the possible Raiola flip, but I think sitting behind McCord is a plus that maybe he didn't anticipate.
Is a plus that Nebraska didn't anticipate in missing out on a bowl game the opportunity to get involved in these conversations with some of these quarterbacks earlier, or would it be better for Nebraska if, made a bowl game, be successful, and would they have the same poll if they didn't have, as much time over these 2 weeks to go recruit because they were preparing for bowl?
Yeah, I don't think it would make a difference, but you might not be wrong in the fact that, right, Nebraska's offense coordinator was able to fly to Columbus, right? I can't guarantee one or the other if that would have happened or not if they were in a bowl game, but I can tell you now because I know that they weren't in a bowl game and he had no problem flying to Columbus in a moment. So, yeah, I think I don't know if it makes a difference or not. I think just credit to Matt and that coaching staff for really just being aggressive from the get-go and knowing that they needed to attack. And honestly, guys, I think he set the tone when he had that press conference and said, hey, if we go out of the quarterback, it needs to be an instant impact guy. And, yeah, we're going to have to shovel out some cash. That's just how it's all going right now.
Let's talk about that because that was the next thing I was going to bring up to you. When Matt Rule did make the comment of 1 to 1.5, maybe $2 million for a QB, Pete, you're more, you're in the transfer portal unlike we are, rather. Is that accurate? Did that reset the market? Where is that number? What's the situation?
That's spot on. You have some quarterbacks right now trying to get more than the highest end of that spectrum where he said $2 million. No, I think that's spot on. And I think what Matt was saying was we're talking about the elite quarterbacks in the transfer portal. We're not talking about Joe Smith, who's a former 2-star who might go to a group of 5 school. No, we're talking about the top 5 to 7 transfer portal quarterbacks. And yeah, I think he's spot on. I don't think NIL was the reason why Kyle McCord left, but I can guarantee you guys that it definitely was a factor. And he thought he was a little bit more than what his worth was than what he was being paid at Ohio State.
Yeah, we heard those comments from Matt Rule, and I think a lot of us here in Lincoln took that as Nebraska's unwilling to pay for it. That's maybe why we saw them, initially start the conversation with guys like Sam Levitt, but then it escalated quickly to the Kyle McCords of the world. Obviously, Dylan Raiola, who has a legacy connection, but still, if you had to put a confidence on Nebraska getting either Kyle McCord and or Dylan Raiola, just where's your head at? I definitely want to get to a big picture college football conversation, but as we kind of put a bow on Nebraska, is McCord taking any more visits that you're aware of? Where's Nebraska stand with both of these guys if you had to make a prediction?
If you were asking my confidence level, I put both at 75 that they flip Raiola and land McCord. I don't see Kyle McCord taking another visit as of right now. And Dylan Raiola should be enrolling at Georgia this weekend and joining the team, but instead he's going to take an OV to Nebraska. If he touches down in Lincoln, I said game over. He's a Nebraska cornhusker.
Yeah, it's truly fascinating. We're getting some questions on our text line. Obviously, there's a lot of excitement in Lincoln because quarterbacks are so polarizing in the college football game nowadays. But there's a couple other interesting names that potentially Nebraska might be in on. I know Princely Uman and obviously his brother Prince Will plays at Nebraska. I don't know if you have any information on Princely, the former Florida Gator. I know he's been involved with some other SEC schools. But then also Trevor Etienne is a guy that Nebraska fans kind of are hoping to hear some good things about. Either debunk them or do you have any information regarding those couple of guys on even just where they're interested in?
I got bad news for you guys. Trevor Etienne is not going to land in Nebraska.
Yep.
Georgia is the favorite. I'd be stunned if he doesn't land at Georgia. Just having conversations with multiple people. Mm-hmm. Just trending towards the Bulldogs right now. In terms of Princely, he was at Ole Miss this week. Hearing some other SEC schools pop up, but yeah, I mean, I don't have any inside track there. But like you mentioned, his brother's at Nebraska, and I would just have to think like playing with a sibling is something not a lot of athletes can do. So I would imagine that Nebraska will definitely get a look somewhere along the way, but can't promise you that they're like a top 3 school or anything like that right now.
All right, Pete. Let's talk a little big picture here with the transfer portal. Because once again, we're hanging out with Pete Nakos of On3 Sports, transfer portal reporter for the guys over there. When you just look at the landscape of college football nowadays, do you ever see this slowing down to where, I mean, quarterbacks are just jumping in left and right? Obviously, there was a lot of them on the board this year. Do you ever see it slowing down?
No. I mean, not until we get to like a new age of college sports where you see revenue sharing or anything like that. But the model we're in right now, I mean, the portal is going to continue to churn. And I don't know how closely you guys follow the courts, but like there was a lawsuit today against NCAA in West Virginia about the transfer portal and 2-time transfer waivers, and the NCAA lost that in court. I mean, it's just the beginning. It's a long process, but athletes who transferred twice, with my understanding, will now be able to play right away for the next 14 days. By no means is that like settled or anything like that. We're just getting started. But my point is, I think the transfer portal is just going to continue to ramp up more and more.
I think when you look at NCAA President Charlie Baker's, proposed solution of opting into that subdivision, for the guys that, go play for the teams that opt into the subdivisions, the one that are giving them the trust funds, it would be hard for them to want to potentially transfer out of that subdivision where they wouldn't then, have that fallback plan. Do you think that if, Charlie Baker's plan came to fruition, obviously with tweaks, that would, keep that pool of players up there in, that same group of schools more often? Or would it be that same kind of free flow of, Power 5 backups going down to, current Group of 5 schools and then Group of 5 stars trying to get up to that subdivision to get a shot at a bigger school?
I don't think there would be a Group of 5 in that subdivision. But I do agree with the sentiment you're saying about athletes moving up and down. Right, you're talking about a trust fund and a minimum of $30,000, which means that they could pay like a quarterback $1 million if they wanted, but there's only so many dollars. So yeah, I think to an extent you could see, and this is such a hypothetical, so just bear with me, but like you could see the backup at Alabama becoming the starter at A&M because A&M can pay more money to the backup than Alabama can because of revenue they generate. Like that's such a hypothetical, but I don't see Group of 5 ever really being a factor in that next subdivision. I think we'll be talking about like 50 schools.
We're here with Pete Nakos of On3 Sports, and one more Nebraska angle that I forgot to mention. Daniel Kalen. It was just announced a couple hours ago or less than that Daniel Kalen, who has been committed to the Huskers for quite a while now and done a lot of the peer recruiting, is going to be taking a visit to Michigan State. Now that kind of caught me off guard because obviously Aiden Childs is I can't remember if he's committed or if he's just trending that way.
No. He's not committed, but he's definitely trending. So pick in for him to win.
Okay, so I mean, it just seems like a really interesting scenario but one that now Daniel Kalen, if Nebraska's, which they are, favorited to get both Raiola and McCord, it just seems like, man, in a blink of an eye, that Daniel Kalen has just switched his idea and thought maybe Michigan State's a better spot for me to land.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely understand why Daniel Kalen would go to Michigan State, right? They lost 3 quarterbacks to the portal. He might have the option to be like the backup right away as a freshman behind Aiden Childs if Aiden does land there, which, I mean, I think like everybody in college football expects right now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would understand that, right? And the Dylan Raiola show comes to town, Kyle McCord comes to town. Like, I completely understand that. Not a shot at Daniel Kalen, but, like, I'm sure you guys would agree with me, but, like, I would assume Raiola would be the backup next year if him and McCord come in.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We got one question on our text line that I want to send your way. I mean, in that conversation of Daniel Kalen moving on, is there concern underlying concern that fellow commits move on, or are we just too late in the process here for really anything to really pick up steam before early signing day next Wednesday?
I would not predict that any commits would flip or anything like that. I think we saw a lot of Twitter reaction with like emojis and stuff yesterday and to me or 2 days ago, and I kind of reacted it to as like, this is exciting, not like I'm gonna flip. So no, I wouldn't worry about the class falling apart or anything like that. And Dylan Raiola knows these guys, right? Like, he's been on campus before, he's met them. There's a story out this week, I believe, too, that like he's been in communication with some of them. So I wouldn't worry about the class falling apart or anything like that.
Well, Pete, we'll go ahead and let you go. I definitely want to get you back on maybe when the dust settles and we're into the springtime, because I think there's a lot of good conversations that we could have just in regards to big picture college football and how much it's changed. Because through the transfer portal, through NIL, I mean, you know it as good as anybody. I mean, who are the major players in the country? And so I definitely want to try to get you back on in the next couple of months once the dust settles. But once again, man, we appreciate you taking some time out of the busy day. And we know, obviously, you're doing a lot for On3 and the transfer portal following. So we really appreciate it, man.
You bet. Thanks so much for having me, guys. Have a great day.
There he is, Pete Nakos of On3, transfer portal reporter for them.